They said she was worthless, defective, a burden better left to freeze in the ice fields where nothing survives and no one comes back. But the night Saren pulled a dying child from the storm, everything changed. The mark that burned into her palm wasn't just a scar. It was a bond to a king she'd never met, a power she didn't understand, and a fate that would drag her from exile into a war that could destroy entire kingdoms. This is the story of an outcast who became a queen, not through destiny, but through one impossible choice. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. Let's begin. The wind didn't howl in the Wraithlands. It screamed. Saren pressed her back against the rock face, feeling the ice creep through the torn layers of her coat. Her fingers were numb. Had been for hours. She'd stopped trying to feel them sometime around midday, when the sky turned that particular shade of gray that meant the blizzard wasn't passing. It was settling in to kill. She should have been dead already. Most outcasts lasted 3, maybe 4 days beyond the border. She'd made it 2 weeks. Not because she was strong, not because she was clever, just stubborn. Too stubborn to give the bastards back home the satisfaction. Her stomach cramped, empty for the 3rd day running. She'd found a frozen hare yesterday, but some other scavenger had gotten there first, torn it to shreds, left nothing but blood-stained snow and scraps of fur too small to bother with. The wind shifted, and for a moment the world went white. Complete. Blinding. She squeezed her eyes shut and tucked her chin, waiting for it to pass. When she opened them again, she could barely see 10 feet ahead. Good a place as any to die, she thought distantly. At least here, no one would find her body. No one would spit on it. No one would say she'd gotten what she deserved. She let herself slide down the rock, her legs folding beneath her. The cold was almost warm now. That was a bad sign, she knew that much. The Grey March pack had sent her out here with nothing, not even a knife. Corvus himself had stripped her of her boots. "You won't be needing those where you're going," he'd said, grinning with all those white teeth, and shoved her past the boundary stones. Defective. That's what they'd called her. She hadn't shifted by her 16th winter, hadn't felt the change, hadn't heard the call of the moon, hadn't run with the pack under the stars. While the others grew strong, fast, whole, she stayed this. Human-shaped, weak, breakable, useless. At first they'd waited, watched, whispered, but patience only lasted so long in a place where survival was measured in teeth and claws. By the time she turned 19, she wasn't just pitied, she was resented. A drain on resources, a weak link. And Corvus, the pack's new alpha after his father's death, had made it clear. There was no room for charity, so they'd cast her out. No trial, no ceremony. Just a cold morning, rough hands, and the empty white expanse of the Wraithland stretching out forever. She pulled her knees to her chest and tucked her hands under her arms, trying to trap what little warmth was left in her body. Her breath came in short, shallow puffs. She watched them dissolve into the air. At least it'll be quiet, she thought. Then she heard it. Faint. Almost swallowed by the wind. A sound. She went still, listened. There. A cry. Thin. Weak. Human. No. Not human, but close. Saren's eyes snapped open. Her head turned slowly, scanning the whiteout around her. It came again, closer this time. She shouldn't move. Every rational part of her knew that. Moving meant burning energy she didn't have. Moving meant dying faster. But the sound... It was a child. She pushed herself up. Her legs shook. Her feet were numb blocks of ice inside the ragged cloth she'd wrapped them in. But she moved. One step. Then another. The wind fought her, shoved her back. She lowered her head and pushed through it, following the sound like a thread in the dark. There. A cluster of rocks half buried in snow, and between them, barely visible, a shape. Small. Curled. Unmoving. Saren dropped to her knees and dug with her bare hands, her fingers screaming in protest. Snow gave way to cloth. Cloth gave way to skin. Cold, pale, wrong. A boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old. His lips were blue. His eyes were closed. "Hey," she rasped. Her voice cracked from disuse. "Hey, wake up." Nothing. She pulled him out of the snow, cradling him against her chest. He was light. too light, like he was already halfway gone. His face was delicate, fine-boned, noble, even beneath the frost. His clothes, what was left of them, were well made, rich fabric, embroidered edges. What the hell is a kid like this doing out here? She pressed her fingers to his throat. There. Faint, but there. A pulse. Relief flooded through her, sharp and unexpected. She didn't even know this child, didn't owe him anything, but the thought of leaving him here, she couldn't. All right, she muttered, shifting his weight in her arms. All right, I've got you. She stood, her legs nearly buckled, but she locked her knees and held. There was a shallow cave she'd passed an hour ago. Not much, but it would block the wind. If she could get him there, get him warm. She took a step. That's when it happened. Heat. Sudden. Searing. Impossibly bright. She gasped and nearly dropped him. Her left palm, the one pressed against his chest, burned. Not with cold. With fire. Light exploded between them, white gold and blinding. She tried to pull away, but her hand wouldn't move. It was stuck, fused. The boy's eyes snapped open. They glowed, pure silver, inhuman. And then the pain hit. It felt like her palm was being branded, like something was being carved into her skin with molten iron. She screamed, but the sound was ripped away by the wind. Images flooded her mind, fast, chaotic, not hers. A grand hall, firelight on stone, a man's face, sharp, severe, handsome in a way that felt dangerous, eyes the color of burnt gold, a voice deep and commanding. Find him, bring him back. Blood, so much blood. A woman's scream cut short, shadows moving wrong, flickering, alive. And then, she was standing in that hall. The man with the golden eyes was looking at her, through her, into her. His voice again, quieter this time. Who are you? The light vanished. She collapsed backward into the snow, gasping. Her left hand, throbbed. She turned it over, shaking. There, burned into her palm, was a mark. Circular. Intricate. Lines that curved and crossed in patterns too deliberate to be natural. It glowed faintly, pulsing in time with her heartbeat. The boy lay still in the snow beside her, breathing shallow but steady. She stared at the mark, then at him, then back at the mark. What the hell did you just do to me? She whispered. He didn't answer. His eyes had closed again, the silver gone. He looked like an ordinary child. But that mark, she knew instinctively that nothing about this was ordinary. She should leave him, walk away, pretend this never happened. But even as the thought crossed her mind, she felt it, a pull. Not physical, deeper, like a thread tied around something vital inside her chest, stretching out into the storm, connected to him. Damn it, she muttered. She scooped him up again, cradling him carefully, and started walking. Ucham. The cave was barely large enough for both of them, but it was dry and out of the wind. Saren set the boy down gently and immediately set to work. She had nothing. No fire starter, no blankets, no supplies. But she'd survived 2 weeks out here. She knew a few tricks. She peeled off her outer coat, the one that was more whole than fabric, and wrapped it around him. Then she gathered what dry scraps she could find. Bits of dead brush that had blown into the cave, shards of bark, a few dried leaves. Her hands were shaking. The mark on her palm kept pulsing, warm and insistent. She ignored it. With trembling fingers, she struck 2 rocks together. Once, twice, 10 times. A spark. She coaxed it into the tinder, breathing gently. The flame caught. Small, fragile, but alive. She fed it carefully, building it up until the cave filled with flickering orange light. The boy stirred. Saren sat back, watching him. His color was coming back, slow but real. His breathing evened out. After a few minutes, his eyes fluttered open. Not silver this time, just dark. Human. He looked at her, blinked. You're not one of them, he said quietly. His voice was small, tired. But there was something in it, an edge of maturity that didn't belong to a child. One of who? Saren asked. The shadows. She frowned. I don't know what that means. He sat up slowly, wincing. His gaze fell to her hand, the one with the mark. His expression shifted. Surprise. Then something that looked almost like relief. You saved me, he said. Yeah, well, she pulled her hand back, tucking it against her side. Don't make it a habit of freezing to death in blizzards, and we'll call it even. He almost smiled. Almost. What's your name? She asked. Ren. Ren, she nodded. I'm Saren. He looked at her for a long moment, his dark eyes serious. You shouldn't have touched me, he said softly. She laughed, sharp and bitter. Yeah, I'm getting that impression. The bond, he continued, it's permanent. You're connected now, to him. To who? Ren hesitated. My father. Saren went very still. Your father, she repeated slowly. Ren nodded. Kael Asheron, king of the Northern Territories. The world tilted. She stared at him. At this small, half-frozen child sitting in a cave in the middle of nowhere, claiming to be the son of one of the most powerful rulers in the known world. You're joking. I'm not. She laughed again, louder this time, because what else could she do? Okay, she said, pressing her palms to her temples. Okay, so let me get this straight. You're a prince. Your dad's a king. And I just accidentally bonded myself to him by pulling you out of a snowbank. Yes. Perfect. She dropped her hands. Great. Fantastic. Best day of my life. Ren's expression didn't change. They'll come for me. Who? The ones who killed my mother. My guards. Everyone. His voice cracked just slightly. They don't leave witnesses. Saren's stomach dropped. What do you mean, they don't leave witnesses? They don't have a scent, Ren said quietly. They move like smoke. My mother tried to fight them, but he stopped, swallowed. She told me to run, so I ran. And you ended up here. I didn't know where else to go. Saren looked at him, really looked. Beneath the princely features and the two old eyes, he was just a scared kid. Alone. Running. She knew that feeling. All right, she said finally. All right. We'll figure it out. There's nothing to figure out. Ren's voice was flat. They'll find me, and when they do, they'll kill you too. Then we don't let them find you. He stared at her like she'd just suggested they fly. You don't understand. No, you don't understand. She leaned forward, meeting his gaze. I've been cast out, starved, and left to die. I've got nothing to lose. So if some shadow assassins want to come after us, let them try. Ren blinked. For the first time since waking, he looked like a child. Why would you help me? He asked. Saren didn't have a good answer. Not one that made sense. But as she looked at him, this small, broken boy who'd lost everything, she felt something shift inside her. Maybe it was the bond. Maybe it was something else. Or maybe she was just tired of running. Because no one helped me, she said simply. And I'm not leaving you to freeze. Ren's eyes shone. He didn't cry, but his voice was thick when he spoke. Thank you. She nodded, looked away. The fire crackled between them. Outside, the storm raged on. They stayed in the cave for 2 days. Ren recovered slowly. The color came back to his face, and he could sit up without wincing. He didn't talk much, just watched her with those two serious eyes and answered her questions in short, careful sentences. Saren learned a few things. 1. Ren's mother had been killed 3 days ago. He'd been running ever since. 2. The assassins, these shadows, were hunting him specifically, not random violence, targeted. 3. The bond on her palm wasn't just a mark. It was a connection. She could feel things through it, emotions, impressions. And sometimes when she closed her eyes, she caught flashes of something else, someone else, a presence. Distant but aware, watching. She didn't tell Ren about that part. On the 3rd morning, the storm finally broke. Saren stepped outside and breathed in the cold, clear air. The world was white and silent, beautiful in a deadly sort of way. Ren appeared beside her, bundled in her coat. We should move, he said. Where? South, away from the Wraithlands. South, she repeated. That's vague. There's a settlement, 3 days' walk if the weather holds. My father's men might be there. And if they're not? Ren didn't answer. Serene sighed. All right, south it is. They set off just after dawn. The first day was hard. Saren's feet were still torn and blistered, and Ren was weak from hunger. But they moved steadily, keeping to the low ground where the wind couldn't reach them. The landscape was brutal. Endless white, interrupted only by jagged rock formations that jutted from the snow like broken teeth. Occasionally, they'd pass the frozen remains of something, a tree twisted and blackened by lightning, or the skeletal frame of an animal that hadn't made it through the last winter. Saren's mind kept wandering back to the mark on her palm. Every few hours, she'd feel it pulse, a reminder that something had changed, that she wasn't alone anymore, even if she couldn't see or hear the person on the other end of that invisible thread. It was disturbing and oddly comforting. She hated both feelings equally. By midday, her stomach was eating itself. Ren hadn't complained, but she could see the way he moved, slower, more careful, conserving energy. We need food, she said. I know. You see anything edible out here? Ren scanned the horizon. No. Great. They kept walking. An hour later, Saren spotted movement. She grabbed Ren's arm, pulling him down behind a snowdrift. What? Shh, she pointed. There, maybe 30 yards ahead, a small herd of ice hares moved across the snow. 6 of them. White as the ground they traveled on, nearly invisible. Ren's eyes widened. Can you catch one? Maybe. She looked around, assessing. No cover. No way to get close without being seen. I need a distraction. I can... No. Her voice was firm. You stay here. If I miss, we'll need to move fast. Before he could argue, she was already moving. She circled wide, keeping low, using the natural dips in the terrain to stay hidden. Her feet screamed with every step, but she ignored them. Pain was just noise. The hares were grazing on something, sparse winter grass poking through the snow. They moved in fits and starts, heads up, ears swiveling. Saren picked up a rock, hefted it, felt its weight. She took a breath. Through. The rock sailed through the air and struck the ground just beyond the herd. The hares bolted, but not away. Toward her, she waited. 1, 2, 3, now. She lunged, arms outstretched. Her hands closed around warm fur. The hare shrieked and kicked, claws raking her arms, but she held on, twisted, snapped its neck with a quick, brutal motion. It went limp. She stood, breathing hard, blood trickling down her forearms. Ren appeared at her side, eyes wide. You got one. Yeah. She held it up. Dinner. His face split into the first real smile she'd seen from him. You're amazing. She snorted. I'm desperate. There's a difference. But secretly, privately, the compliment warmed something inside her that had been cold for a very long time. Bump. They cooked the hare that night over a small fire, tearing into the meat with their hands. It was tough and gamey, but it was the best thing Saren had tasted in weeks. Ren ate slowly, savoring each bite. You're good at this, he said. At what? Surviving. She snorted. Wouldn't go that far. You are. He looked at her seriously. Most people wouldn't have made it 2 weeks out here. Most people aren't desperate enough. He tilted his head. Is that what you are? Desperate? She didn't answer immediately. The fire popped, sending sparks spiraling into the dark. I don't know what I am anymore, she said finally. A month ago, I had a pack, a place. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Now, she gestured at the empty wasteland around them. Now I've got nothing. You have me. She looked at him. He said it so simply, like it was a fact. Kid, you're a liability. No offense. None taken. He smiled faintly. But you still saved me. Yeah, well, bad habit. They sat in silence for a while, watching the fire burn down. Finally, Ren spoke again. The bond, he said. Can you feel it? She tensed. What do you mean? My father. The connection. Can you feel him? She wanted to lie, to say no. But something in his eyes, something too knowing, made her tell the truth. Sometimes, she admitted, it's like background noise, distant, but there. Ren nodded. He can feel you too. Great, she muttered. That's not creepy at all. He's probably trying to find us. Find me. Then why hasn't he? The Wraithlands are difficult to navigate, even for him. And if the shadows are still hunting, he stopped, looked away. He'll come, eventually. Saren poked at the fire with a stick. This king of yours, what's he like? Ren considered the question. Strong, he said finally. Fierce. People fear him, but he's fair. He doesn't rule through cruelty, just power. Sounds terrifying. He is, Ren's voice softened, but he loved my mother, and he loves me, in his way. His way? He's not warm, not like other fathers, but he would burn the world down to keep me safe. The certainty in his voice sent a chill down Saren's spine. And now I'm connected to him, she said quietly. Permanently. Ren met her eyes. Yes. What does that mean, really? It means, Ren said slowly, that your life is no longer entirely your own. The bond ties you to him. You'll feel his emotions sometimes. He'll feel yours. And in moments of great need, you'll be able to reach each other across any distance. Can it be broken? Ren's expression darkened. Yes, but not easily, and not without cost. What kind of cost? The kind that destroys both people involved. Saren absorbed that, felt the weight of it settle on her shoulders like a physical thing. She'd saved a child in a blizzard, a single moment of compassion, and it had chained her to a king. I didn't ask for this, she said. I know. Ren's voice was quiet. I'm sorry. Don't be. I made the choice. You didn't know what would happen. No, she agreed, but I'd do it again. The words surprised her, but they were true. Even knowing what it would cost, she'd still pull him out of that snow, still wrap him in her coat, still fight to keep him alive. Because the alternative, walking away, leaving him to die, she couldn't live with that. Ren looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached out and took her hand, the one with the mark. His small fingers traced the intricate pattern burned into her palm. You're not what I expected, he said. What did you expect? Someone harder, colder. Most people who survive the Wraithlands are different, broken. Who says I'm not broken? You are, he said simply, but not in the way that matters. She didn't know how to respond to that, so she just squeezed his hand and let the moment pass. On the second day, they made good progress. The weather held, cold but clear, and the terrain became slightly less hostile. They even found a frozen stream and managed to crack through the ice to get water. Saren's feet were getting worse. The makeshift wrappings were falling apart, and every step sent pain shooting up her legs. But she didn't slow down. Ren noticed, of course. You're hurt, he said. I'm fine. You're limping. I said I'm fine. He didn't push, just walked beside her in silence. But that night, when they stopped to rest, he disappeared into the darkness for a few minutes. Came back with strips of cloth he'd torn from the inside of his shirt. Here, he said, handing them to her. For your feet. She stared at him. You'll freeze. I have your coat. I'll be okay. Ren, please. The word was so small, so earnest. She took the cloth. Thank you, she said quietly. He just nodded and curled up by the fire. Saren unwrapped her feet carefully. They were a mess, blistered, bleeding, the skin torn in places. She cleaned them as best she could with snow, then wrapped them in the fresh cloth. It helped. Not much, but enough. As she worked, she felt the bond pulse again, stronger this time. She closed her eyes and let herself focus on it. The sensation was immediate, overwhelming, rage, burning, terrible rage. And beneath it, fear, desperation. He was looking for them, for Ren. And he was failing. The frustration rolled off him in waves, crashing against her like a physical force. She gasped and pulled back, breaking the connection. Her heart was pounding. She looked at Ren, still asleep by the fire. He would burn the world down to keep me safe. She believed it now. On the third day, they saw the smoke. It rose in a thin black line against the pale sky, maybe 2 miles ahead. Ren stopped. That's the settlement, he said. Saren squinted. Looks pretty small. It is, but there'll be people, supplies. And your father's men? Maybe. She didn't like the uncertainty in his voice, but they didn't have a choice. They were out of food, out of options. All right, she said, let's go. They walked in silence, tension building with every step. The settlement came into view an hour later, a cluster of low buildings huddled around a central square. Smoke rose from a few chimneys. A handful of people moved between the structures, bundled against the cold. It looked normal. Too normal. Saren's instincts prickled. Stay close, she murmured. Ren nodded, his hand slipping into hers. They entered the square. A few heads turned, watched, but no one approached. Saren scanned the area, looking for anything useful. A market stall, a guard post, something. Movement caught her eye. A man stepped out from behind one of the buildings, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing the gray cloak of the Gray March pack. Her blood went cold. It was Corvus, and he wasn't alone. 5 more pack members emerged from the shadows, forming a loose semicircle around them. All of them grinning, all of them armed. Corvus's smile widened as he saw her. Well, well, he said, his voice carrying across the square. Look what crawled out of the ice. Saren's hand tightened around Ren's. Her mind raced. Run, fight, hide. None of those options would work. Not against 6 trained shifters, but she'd be damned if she went down without trying. Corvus, she said, keeping her voice steady. Funny seeing you here. Funny? He laughed. I don't think so. We've been tracking you for 2 days, Saren. Did you really think you could just walk into a settlement without us knowing? Tracking me? Her stomach dropped. Why? His eyes flicked to Ren, lingered. Oh, I think you know why. Ren pressed closer to her side. She could feel him trembling. He's just a kid, Saren said. He's got nothing to do with... He's the king's son, Corvus interrupted. And there's a very, very large bounty on his head. The world slowed. Bounty. Of course. Someone had put a price on Ren's life, and the Gray March pack, always desperate for resources, always hungry for power, had come to collect. You won't touch him, Saren said. Corvus raised an eyebrow. And who's going to stop me? You? She didn't answer, just shifted her stance, putting herself between Ren and the pack. Corvus laughed again, louder this time. You're not even a shifter, Saren. You're nothing. You always have been. Maybe, she said, but I'm still standing between you and him. For now, he gestured. The pack members moved forward. Saren's heart hammered. She had no weapon, no plan, no chance, but she didn't move. Corvus stopped a few feet away, studying her with something like curiosity. Why? He asked. Why protect him? What is he to you? She didn't have an answer, not one that would make sense to him. So she just met his eyes and said, because it's the right thing to do. He stared at her, then shook his head. You always were a fool. He reached for Ren, and that's when the mark on Saren's palm exploded with light. The world went white. Power surged through her, raw, untamed, burning. It poured out of the mark and into her veins, filling every inch of her body with fire. She screamed. The pack members stumbled back, shielding their eyes. Corvus snarled. What the? The light condensed, focused, and then it burst outward in a shockwave of pure energy. The force of it sent everyone flying. Pack members crashed into buildings. Corvus hit the ground hard, rolling. Saren stood at the center of it all, glowing like a star. The mark on her palm blazed, and for the first time in her life she felt strong. Not weak, not broken, whole. Ren stared up at her, eyes wide. Saren? She looked down at him, at her hands still glowing with that impossible light. I don't know what... The bond, Ren whispered. He's channeling power through you. What? My father. He felt you in danger. He's... The light flickered, dimmed. Saren gasped as the strength drained out of her. Her legs gave out. She collapsed to her knees. Corvus was already getting up. Blood ran from a cut on his forehead, but his eyes were sharp, furious. Grab them, he snarled. Hands seized her arms, dragged her upright. She tried to fight, but she had nothing left. The power was gone. She was just her again. Weak. Breakable. Human. Ren struggled as another pack member grabbed him, but it was useless. Corvus approached slowly, wiping blood from his face. That, he said quietly, was a mistake. He backhanded her across the face. Pain exploded through her skull. The world tilted. You're coming with us, Corvus continued. Both of you. And if you try that trick again... He grabbed Ren by the throat, lifting him off the ground. I'll snap his neck. Ren choked, hands scrabbling at Corvus's grip. No, Theron gasped. Don't. I won't. Corvus dropped him. Ren hit the ground, coughing. Good. Corvus gestured to his pack. Bind them. We move at nightfall. Rough hands yanked Saren's arms behind her back. She felt rope bite into her wrists. Beside her, Ren was being tied as well. Their eyes met. His were full of tears and guilt. I'm sorry, he whispered. She wanted to tell him it wasn't his fault, that she'd made her choice, that she didn't regret it. But before she could speak, a hood was thrown over her head. Darkness swallowed her whole. And in that darkness, she felt the bond pulse one last time. Distant, desperate. I'm coming, it seemed to say. But Saren knew the truth. He wouldn't make it in time. The hood smelled like old blood and sweat. Saren tried not to breathe too deeply as she was shoved forward, stumbling over uneven ground. Her hands were bound so tight behind her back that her fingers had gone numb. Every few steps, someone would shove her harder than necessary, laughing when she nearly fell. She could hear Ren nearby, his breathing quick and shallow, the scuff of his feet against stone. He wasn't crying. She was grateful for that. Crying would only make them crueler. Keep moving, Corvus barked from somewhere ahead. They'd been walking for hours, or maybe minutes. Time had lost meaning in the darkness. Saren's mind raced, trying to piece together what had happened. The power that had exploded from her palm, where had it come from? Ren said his father was channeling through the bond, but that didn't make sense. How could someone she'd never met reach across hundreds of miles and pour strength into her veins? And more importantly, why had it stopped? The mark on her palm throbbed dully. She flexed her fingers trying to feel that connection again, but there was nothing, just emptiness. Maybe the distance was too great. Maybe the king had exhausted himself trying to help. Or maybe he'd simply given up on a lost cause. The thought settled in her chest like ice. A hand grabbed her shoulder and yanked her to a stop. We're here, Corvus said. The hood was ripped off. Saren blinked against the sudden light, dim as it was. They were in some kind of storage building at the edge of the settlement. Wooden walls, dirt floor, empty crates stacked in the corners. A single lantern hung from a beam, casting long shadows. Ren stood a few feet away, his hood already removed. His face was pale, but his eyes were defiant. Corvus circled them slowly, like a predator sizing up prey. Here's how this is going to work, he said. You're going to sit quietly. You're not going to try anything stupid. And in a few hours, when our buyer arrives, you're going to be very well behaved. Buyer? Saren's voice came out rougher than she intended. Corvus smiled. Did you think we were keeping you? Please. The boy's worth more gold than our pack will see in 10 years, and you... He reached out and grabbed her chin, forcing her to look at him. You're a bonus. Turns out there's interest in anyone bonded to the king. Something about leverage. He released her with a shove. Saren's mind whirled. Someone wanted Ren dead badly enough to put a bounty on his head. And now they wanted her too, because of a mark she hadn't asked for and didn't understand. Who's buying? She asked. Does it matter? It does to me. Corvus laughed. Bold words from someone tied up on the floor. He gestured to his pack members. Watch them. If either one tries to escape, break their legs. The pack members nodded, spreading out around the room. Corvus headed for the door, then paused. Looked back at Saren. You know what the funny part is, he said. When we cast you out, I actually felt bad. Just a little. Thought maybe we were being too harsh. He shook his head. But now I think we should have killed you outright. Would have saved everyone a lot of trouble. The door slammed behind him. Silence fell over the room. Saren lowered herself to the ground carefully, her bound hands making it awkward. Ren sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. Are you okay? She whispered. I'm fine. His voice was steady, but she could feel him shaking. You? Been better. One of the pack members, a woman with a scarred face, stepped closer. No talking. Saren bit back a response. Antagonizing them wouldn't help. She leaned back against the wall and closed her eyes, trying to think. They had maybe a few hours before this mysterious buyer showed up. After that? She didn't want to think about after that. The bond pulsed weakly. She focused on it, reaching out tentatively. This time the response was clear. Not power, not strength, just emotion. Rage, desperation, and something that felt almost like recognition. He knew where she was, or at least he knew she was in danger. Then where the hell are you? She thought viciously. No answer. Just that steady, burning fury on the other end of the connection. She opened her eyes and looked at Ren. He was watching her. You felt it too, he whispered. The scarred woman moved toward them. I said no. The building shook. Everyone froze. It came again, a deep, resonant boom that rattled the walls and sent dust raining from the ceiling. What was that? One of the pack members said. The scarred woman moved to the door, cracked it open, peered out. Her face went pale. Get Corvus, she said. Now! Another pack member ran out. The rest stood frozen, staring at the door. Saren's heart hammered. She looked at Ren. What's happening? I don't know. But there was something in his eyes, something that looked like hope. The door burst open. Corvus strode in, his expression dark. Everyone out. We're moving them. What? Why? Because there's an army on the horizon, Corvus snarled, and they're flying the king's banner. The room erupted into chaos. Pack members scrambled for weapons, shouting questions. Corvus barked orders, trying to restore control. Saren felt her breath catch. He came. The king, this man she'd never met, this stranger on the other end of an impossible bond, had brought an army to find his son. Corvus grabbed Ren by the arm and hauled him to his feet. You're coming with me. No. Saren lunged forward, but the scarred woman kicked her back down. Pain exploded in her ribs. Leave her, Corvus said. She's not worth the trouble. But the buyer can have what's left after we're gone. He dragged Ren toward the door. Ren struggled, kicking and twisting. Saren! Ren! The scarred woman's boot came down on Saren's shoulder, pinning her to the ground. She fought anyway, thrashing wildly, but it was useless. She watched helplessly as Corvus disappeared through the door with Ren. The scarred woman leaned down, her breath hot on Saren's face. Looks like your little prince is gone and you're... The wall exploded. Wood and stone burst inward in a spray of debris. The scarred woman was thrown across the room like a doll. Saren rolled away, coughing on dust. Through the gaping hole in the wall, a figure stepped through, tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a dark cloak that seemed to drink in the light, and his eyes, burnt gold. The same eyes from her vision. Kael Asheron, king of the Northern Territories, had arrived. He didn't look at the pack members scrambling for weapons, didn't acknowledge the chaos. His gaze swept the room and locked onto Saren. Their eyes met. The bond flared. Saren gasped as sensation crashed through her, his rage, his relief, his absolute certainty. It was overwhelming, too much. She couldn't breathe. And then he was moving. The pack members attacked. 3 of them, shifting mid-lunge into their wolf forms. Fast, deadly. Kael didn't even slow down. He moved like water, like shadow, like something that shouldn't be possible. His hand lashed out and caught the first wolf by the throat. There was a sickening crack and it dropped. The second wolf lunged for his back. He spun, his cloak whirling, and drove his fist through its skull. The third hesitated, just for a moment. It was enough. Kael's hand shot out, and suddenly there was a blade in it, curved, black, wrong, and the wolf's head hit the ground before its body realized it was dead. The whole thing took maybe 10 seconds. Saren stared, her mind struggling to process what she'd just witnessed. Kael turned to her. Up close, he was even more terrifying. His face was all hard angles and sharp lines, his jaw set in a way that suggested he'd never smiled in his life. His hair was dark, shot through with silver at the temples. And those eyes? They pinned her in place. Where is my son? His voice was low, controlled, but she could hear the violence simmering beneath it. Corvus took him, she said. Maybe a minute ago. They went... He was already moving. Wait. She struggled to her feet, hands still bound. "You can't just... I'm still tied." He paused at the door, looked back. For a moment she thought he might leave her there. Then he crossed the distance between them in 2 strides, grabbed her shoulder, and spun her around. She felt a tug, and the ropes fell away. "Stay here," he said. "Like hell." His eyes narrowed. "You'll only slow me down. He's my responsibility too. You're human, fragile. You'll die. Then I'll die." She met his gaze. "But I'm not staying here." For a long moment they stared at each other. Then Kael did something unexpected. He smiled. It wasn't warm, wasn't kind, but it held an edge of respect. "Try to keep up," he said, and he ran. Saren ran after him. Outside, the settlement was in chaos. People screamed and scattered as Kael's soldiers, dozens of them, all armed and armored, swept through the streets. The Grey March pack was trying to fight back, but they were hopelessly outmatched. Saren spotted Corvus near the far edge of the square. He had Ren slung over his shoulder, running for the tree line. "There!" she shouted. Kael saw. His expression went cold. He moved faster than should have been possible, closing the distance in seconds. Corvus heard him coming and spun, dropping Ren and shifting mid-turn. His wolf form was massive, easily twice the size of a normal wolf, with silver-gray fur and teeth like daggers. He lunged. Kael caught him by the throat with one hand. Corvus snarled and snapped, claws raking at Kael's arm. Blood ran. Kael didn't flinch. "You touched my son," Kael said quietly. And then he squeezed. Corvus's snarl turned into a choke. His eyes bulged. His claws scrabbled uselessly. Kael's hand tightened. There was a wet, crunching sound. Corvus went limp. Kael dropped him like garbage and turned to Ren. The boy was huddled on the ground, shaking. When he saw his father, his face crumpled. "Papa!" Kael knelt and pulled him into his arms. For just a moment, the terrifying king disappeared. In his place was just a father, holding his child. "You're safe," Kael murmured. "I've got you." Ren sobbed into his shoulder. Saren stood a few feet away, suddenly feeling like an intruder. This was a private moment, not meant for her. She started to back away. Kael's head snapped up. "Where are you going?" She froze. "I thought you'd want... Come here." It wasn't a request. Saren approached slowly. Kael looked at her over Ren's head, his golden eyes unreadable. "You saved him," he said. Yes, but I also got him captured, so... You saved him." Each word was deliberate, final. "When you had no reason to. When it would have been easier to let him die." Saren didn't know what to say to that. Kael stood, lifting Ren with him. He studied Saren for a long moment. "You're the one from the vision," he said finally. "The outcast." She bristled. "Is that what you saw?" "I saw someone alone in the ice, dying, and then I saw you holding my son." His gaze dropped to her hand. "Show me." She held out her palm. The mark glowed faintly in the dim light. Kael's expression shifted, something that might have been surprise or recognition or both. "Impossible," he murmured. "What is?" "This bond. It shouldn't exist. Not like this." He looked back at her face. "You're not royal, not trained. You shouldn't have been able to trigger it." "Well, I did. So what does that mean?" "It means," Kael said slowly, "that you're stuck with me. With us. Whether you want to be or not." The word should have felt like a threat, but there was something almost apologetic in his tone. "I didn't ask for this," Saren said. "No one ever does." One of Kael's soldiers approached, bowing. "Your Majesty, the settlement is secure. What are your orders?" "Burn it," Kael said without hesitation. "Leave nothing standing." Saren's stomach dropped. "Wait, there are people here, civilians. They harbored my son's kidnappers. They're just trying to survive." Kael's eyes were hard. They made their choice. "And you're going to kill them for it?" "I'm going to make sure no one else gets the same idea." Saren stepped forward, putting herself between him and the soldier. "No." The soldier's hand went to his sword. Kael raised a hand, stopping him. "No?" Kale repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. You want to punish someone? Fine. Punish the pack members who took Ren. But these people, she gestured at the settlement. They didn't do anything. They stood by and watched. Because they were scared. Because your world, this world of kings and power and violence, terrifies them. Her voice cracked. I know what it's like to be powerless, to have nowhere to go. And if you burn this place, you're no better than the people who hurt Ren. Silence. Kale stared at her. She could feel his anger through the bond, a burning, barely contained rage. But she didn't back down. Finally, Kale spoke. You dare lecture me? Someone has to. Ren stirred in his father's arms. Papa, she's right. Kale looked down at him. Ren, please don't hurt them. They didn't know. For a long moment, Kyle said nothing. Then he turned to the soldier. Secure the settlement. Detain anyone who was involved with the Grey March pack. Leave the rest. The soldier bowed and hurried away. Saren let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Kyle's gaze returned to her. You have a dangerous habit of challenging authority. Yeah, well, it's kept me alive so far. Almost smile touched his lips again. We'll see how long that lasts. Before Saren could respond, another soldier ran up. This one looked panicked. Your Majesty, we have a problem. Kale's expression hardened. What is it? The scouts found tracks, fresh, leading north into the Blightwood. How many? At least a dozen, maybe more, and the soldier hesitated. They don't have sense, my lord. The temperature seemed to drop. Ren made a small, frightened sound. Saren felt ice in her veins. The shadows. Kale's jaw tightened. How long ago? Hour. Maybe less. They're circling back, Kale said, more to himself than anyone else. They know the boy is here, and they're waiting for an opportunity. Then we leave, Saren said. Right now. Get Ren somewhere safe. There is nowhere safe. Kale's voice was flat. Not while they're hunting him. Then what do we do? Kale looked at her, really looked, like he was weighing something. We set a trap, he said finally. What kind of trap? The kind that uses live bait. Saren's stomach twisted. You can't be serious. They want my son, so we give them a chance to take him. That's insane. It's strategic. Kyle shifted Ren in his arms. We control the battlefield, draw them out, end this. And if it doesn't work, if they actually manage to take him, they won't. You don't know that. I do. His voice was absolute. Because I will tear apart anyone who tries. Saren wanted to argue, to find another way. But she could see in his eyes that his mind was made up. And more terrifying, she could feel his certainty through the bond. He believed completely that he could protect Ren, even if it meant using him as bait. I don't like this, she said quietly. You don't have to. Kyle turned to his soldiers. Prepare the perimeter. I want archers on every rooftop, infantry in the shadows, and someone find me a secure building with only one entrance. The soldiers scattered. Kyle started walking, still carrying Ren. Saren fell into step beside him. Where are we going? Somewhere defensible. And then what? Then we wait. They found a stone building near the center of the settlement, some kind of storehouse with thick walls and narrow windows. Kale's soldiers moved through it quickly, checking every corner, every shadow. When they were satisfied, Kyle set Ren down. The boy immediately grabbed his father's hand. I don't want to be bait. I know. Well, Kale knelt beside him. But this is the only way to end it. To make sure they stop hunting you. What if I won't let them take you? I promise. Ren looked at Saren. Will you stay? She wanted to say no, wanted to walk away from this insanity. But the look in his eyes, yeah, she said, I'll stay. Ren's shoulders relaxed slightly. Kale stood and moved to the window, scanning the darkening street outside. They'll come at night, he said, when visibility is lowest. They'll try to get in fast, grab Ren, and disappear before we can react. How do you know? Saren asked. Because it's what I would do. She moved to stand beside him. And you're sure your soldiers can handle them? No. He glanced at her. But I can. His confidence should have been reassuring. Instead, it just made her more nervous. The hours crawled by. Kael's soldiers took up positions around the building. Saren could see them through the windows, silent, still, waiting. Inside, the tension was suffocating. Ren sat in the corner, knees pulled to his chest. Kael stood by the door, one hand resting on the hilt of that impossible black blade. And Saren paced. She couldn't sit still. Couldn't stop thinking about all the ways this could go wrong. "You're making me nervous," Kael said without looking at her. "Good. You should be nervous. This is a terrible plan. Do you have a better one?" She didn't. More silence. Finally, Saren spoke. "Can I ask you something?" "If you must." "Why did you bond with me? Or, why did the bond form? Ren said it shouldn't be possible." Kael was quiet for a moment. "It shouldn't. The royal bonds are specific. They form between family members or those of similar power, not outcasts." He looked at her. "I was going to say strangers, but yes." "So why did it happen?" "I don't know." He sounded almost frustrated. "The moment Ren was in danger, I felt it. A pull. And then suddenly there was you, this person I'd never met, connected to me in a way that should be impossible." He paused. "It was disorienting." "Tell me about it." "But it saved his life, saved both of your lives. So whatever the reason," he turned to face her fully. "I'm grateful." The words were simple, but the weight behind them was immense. Saren didn't know how to respond. She was saved from having to by a sound outside. A whistle, sharp and short. Kael's head snapped toward the window. "They're here!" Saren's heart hammered. "How many?" "Can't tell yet." He moved away from the door, positioning himself between it and Ren. "Stay back, both of you." "I can fight." "No." His voice was iron. "You stay with Ren. If something happens to me, you run." "I'm not leaving you." "You will." He looked at her, and for the first time she saw fear in his eyes. Not for himself. For them. "Promise me." She wanted to argue, but the intensity in his gaze stopped her. "Fine," she said. "I promise." He nodded. The door exploded inward, shadows poured through, not metaphorical but literal, writhing, twisting darkness that moved like living smoke. And in the center of it, figures. Tall, thin, wearing masks of bone. The shadow assassins had arrived. Kael met them head-on. His blade sang as it left its sheath, and suddenly the room was full of light. Not the gold-white light of the bond. This was different, darker, like concentrated moonlight. The shadows recoiled. Kael moved through them like a dancer, his blade cutting precise arcs. Where it touched, the darkness dissolved, screaming. But there were too many. For every shadow he destroyed, two more took its place. Saren grabbed Ren and pulled him toward the back of the room. "Stay behind me." One of the masked figures turned toward them. Saren felt her blood freeze. It moved wrong, flickering, like it wasn't entirely there. Kael saw. "Don't touch it!" Too late. The figure lunged. Saren shoved Ren aside and threw herself forward, hoping to buy time. The figure's hand closed around her throat. Cold. So cold it burned. She gasped, clawing at its wrist. But there was nothing solid to grab, just smoke and shadow. Her vision started to darken. Then, heat. The mark on her palm blazed. Power flooded through her, just like before. But this time it was different, sharper, more controlled. She didn't know what she was doing, didn't have time to think. She just pushed. Light exploded from her hand. The shadow figure shrieked and released her, stumbling back. Saren fell to her knees, gasping. Kael was there in an instant, his blade driving through the figure's chest. It dissolved with an inhuman wail. He grabbed Saren's arm and hauled her up. "I told you not to." The ceiling collapsed. Debris rained down. Saren felt Kael's arms wrap around her, shielding her as stone and wood crashed around them. When the dust cleared, half the building was gone. And standing in the rubble was something worse. A figure. Tall. Wrapped in shadows so thick they seemed solid. Its eyes glowed red, and when it spoke, its voice was like grinding stone. "Give us the boy." Kael stepped forward, placing himself between the creature and Ren. "Over my dead body." The Shadow King, because that's what this had to be, laughed. That can be arranged. It moved, faster than anything that size should move. Its hand, clawed, massive, swept toward Kael. He blocked with his blade. The impact sent him skidding backward. The creature pressed its advantage, attacking with brutal efficiency. Kael fought back, but Saren could see he was being driven into a corner. She looked at Ren, at the mark on her palm. The bond. She'd channeled power twice now, both times by accident, but if she could do it on purpose— "Ren," she said urgently, "the bond. Can you feel it?" He nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I need you to help me. Help me reach your father. I don't know how." "Just try, please." He squeezed his eyes shut. Saren closed her eyes and focused on the mark. The connection was there. Faint. Strained. She pushed toward it. "I need more," she thought desperately. "Give me more." At first, nothing. Then, "You'll burn." Kael's voice, in her head, clear as if he'd spoken aloud. "I don't care. Just do it." A pause. Then, "Hold on." The mark ignited. Power poured into her. Not a trickle. A flood. It was too much. Too hot. Too bright. She screamed. But she didn't let go. She opened her eyes. The world was bathed in golden light. She could see energy flowing through everything. The walls, the ground, the people, and the shadows. She could see them clearly now. Not just darkness, but twisted things held together by stolen life force. She looked at the Shadow King. At its core, she saw something pulsing. A heart, black and corrupted. There. She raised her hand and pushed. Light lanced from her palm like a spear. It struck the Shadow King's chest, dead center. The creature roared, a sound of pure agony. The light spread, burning through the shadows, dissolving them. The Shadow King staggered, fell to its knees. Kael didn't hesitate. He drove his blade through the creature's skull. It exploded into ash. Silence. Saren collapsed. The last thing she saw before darkness took her was Kael's face, his eyes wide with something that might have been fear. Then nothing. When Saren woke, she couldn't feel her hands. That was the first thing. Not pain, not cold, just absence, like her body had decided certain parts weren't worth maintaining anymore. She tried to move her fingers. Nothing happened. Panic clawed at her throat. She forced her eyes open. Stone ceiling, torchlight, the smell of herbs and something acrid that made her want to gag. She was lying on a narrow cot in what looked like a medical tent. No, not a tent. A room, stone walls. A fortress, maybe. "Don't move." The voice came from her left, female, clipped. Saren turned her head, slowly, because everything felt wrong and disconnected, and saw a woman sitting beside her bed. Middle-aged, gray hair pulled back severely, wearing robes marked with symbols Saren didn't recognize. "Who?" "I'm Thera, the king's physician." The woman leaned forward, pressing cool fingers against Saren's wrist. "You've been unconscious for 3 days." 3 days. The memory hit her like a fist. The Shadow King. The light pouring from her palm. The burning. "Ren," she croaked, "where's—" "The prince is fine. Safe." Thera's expression softened slightly. "Thanks to you." Relief flooded through her. Then fear. "My hands, I can't feel—" "You channeled too much power through an untrained body." Thera released her wrist. "The bond wasn't meant to be used that way. You're lucky you didn't kill yourself." "Will they function again?" "Eventually. Maybe. It depends on how much permanent damage was done." She stood, moving to a table covered in bottles and bandages. "The mark is the problem. It's been trying to heal you, but it's also been draining you. You need rest. Weeks of it." "I don't have weeks. You don't have a choice." Saren tried to sit up. Her arms gave out immediately, and she collapsed back onto the cot, gasping. Thera didn't move to help her, just watched with those clinical eyes. "You're going to hurt yourself," she said. "I need to see Ren." "The prince doesn't need you hovering over him. He has his father." Something in the woman's tone made Saren's skin prickle. "You don't want me here." Thera's expression didn't change. "What I want is irrelevant. The king has ordered that you be cared for, so I'm caring for you." But you think I'm a problem? I think, Thera said carefully, that you're a complication, an unknown variable in a situation that's already precarious. Because I'm bonded to him. Because you're bonded to him and you're nobody. No training, no lineage, no understanding of what that bond means or how to control it. She moved closer, her voice dropping. You could have killed the king when you pulled that stunt. Did you know that? Channeling power like that goes both ways. You drain him, he drains you. If either one of you had been weaker, you'd both be dead. Saren's stomach turned. I was trying to help. And you did, this time. But next time? Thera shook her head. You're a liability. The words hit harder than they should have, because they were true. Saren looked down at her hands, still numb, still useless, and felt something crack inside her. She'd saved Ren, saved Kael. But at what cost? And more importantly, what happened when she couldn't save them? The door opened. Kael stepped through. He looked different than she remembered, tired. The hard edges of his face seemed sharper, like he hadn't slept. His eyes found hers immediately. Leave us, he said to Thera. The physician bowed and left without a word. The door closed. Kael crossed the room in 3 strides and sat in the chair Thera had vacated. For a long moment, he just looked at her. You're an idiot, he said finally. She almost laughed. Nice to see you too. You could have died. Yeah, I got the lecture. I'm serious. His voice was low, dangerous. What you did, the amount of power you pulled, it should have killed you. But it didn't. That doesn't make it smart. Saren met his gaze. Would you have done anything different if it was Ren dying? He didn't answer. That's what I thought. Kael leaned back, his jaw tight. You don't understand what you are, what this bond makes you. Then explain it to me. You're tied to me now, permanently. Not just in some abstract way. You're part of my court, whether you like it or not. My enemies will target you. My allies will question you, and every decision I make will affect your life. So I'm a prisoner. You're protected. Same thing. His eyes flashed. No, it's not. Silence fell between them. Saren broke it. Where's Ren? Training. He's 8. He's a prince, and he's been through hell. He needs to feel strong again. She couldn't argue with that. Is he okay? Really? Kael's expression softened, just slightly. He asks about you every day. Wants to know when you'll wake up. Something warm flickered in her chest. Can I see him? When you can stand without falling over, yes. I can stand. Prove it. Saren gritted her teeth and pushed herself upright. Her arms shook, her vision blurred, but she got her feet under her and stood for about 3 seconds. Then her legs gave out. Kael caught her before she hit the ground. His hands were warm against her arms, steady. Stubborn, he muttered. You have no idea. He helped her back onto the cot, didn't let go immediately. Thank you, he said quietly, for saving him, for saving us. The words were simple, but the weight of them. Saren looked away. Don't. I didn't do it for gratitude. I know. He released her, stood. But you have it anyway. He moved toward the door. Kael. He stopped, looked back. Thera said I'm a liability. Is that what you think? For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then, I think you're dangerous, reckless, and completely untrained. He paused. But no, I don't think you're a liability. What am I then? His golden eyes held hers. I don't know yet. The door closed behind him. Saren lay back, staring at the ceiling, her hands still numb and her mind racing. She'd thought the hard part was over, thought that once they escaped the shadows, things would get easier. She'd been wrong. The next few days blurred together. Thera came and went, bringing food and medicine and disapproval in equal measure. Saren's hands slowly regained feeling, pins and needles at first, then dull aches, then finally something approaching normal, but the mark on her palm never stopped pulsing. On the 5th day, Ren came to visit. She heard him before she saw him, rapid footsteps in the hallway, then the door bursting open. Saren! He launched himself at her, and she barely caught him in time. His arms wrapped around her neck, squeezing tight. Hey, kid, she said, her throat suddenly tight. Miss me? So much. His voice was muffled against her shoulder. Papa said you were sick, that you might not wake up. Takes more than that to kill me. He pulled back, looking at her with those two serious eyes. You saved us. Again. Yeah, well, someone's got to keep you out of trouble. He smiled. It was small, but real. They talked for a while, about nothing important. He told her about his training, about the fortress, about the soldiers who'd started teaching him sword forms. She listened, grateful for the distraction. Eventually, though, his expression grew serious. Sarin, can I ask you something? Sure. Are you going to leave? The question caught her off guard. What? After you're better, are you going to go back to wherever you came from? She didn't have an answer, hadn't let herself think that far ahead. I don't know, she said honestly. I don't want you to. His voice was small. I know that's selfish, but you're the first person who... He stopped, started again. Everyone else looks at me and sees the prince, or the air, or the target. But you just see me. Her chest ached. Ren, please don't go. She pulled him into a hug. We'll figure it out. Okay? He nodded against her shoulder, but even as she said the words, she knew they were hollow, because sooner or later she'd have to decide. Stay in this world of kings and power and danger, or walk away and reclaim what little freedom she had left. On the 7th day, Thera declared her fit enough to leave the medical wing. Don't do anything stupid, the physician said. And if you feel the mark acting up, come back immediately. What counts as acting up? You'll know. Helpful. Sarin left the medical wing and stepped into the fortress proper for the first time. It was massive. Stone corridors stretched in every direction, lit by torches and strange glowing crystals embedded in the walls. Soldiers moved through the halls with purpose, their armor clanking. Servants hurried past, carrying trays and linens. Everyone stared at her, some with curiosity, some with suspicion. One guard actually put his hand on his sword as she passed. She kept her head down and walked faster. She found Kael in what appeared to be a strategy room. Maps covered a large table marked with symbols and lines. Several advisors stood around it, arguing. Kael looked up as she entered. Sarin. The advisors fell silent, turning to stare at her. Sorry, she said. Should I? No, stay. Kael gestured to the maps. You should hear this. One of the advisors, a tall man with a scarred face, frowned. Your Majesty, surely this is not appropriate. She's bonded to me. That makes it appropriate. Kael's tone left no room for argument. Continue. The scarred man's jaw tightened, but he turned back to the map. As I was saying, the shadow attacks are escalating. We've had reports from 3 territories in the past week alone. Villages burned, people taken, and the pattern suggests they're moving toward the capital. How many? Kael asked. Impossible to say. They don't leave bodies, don't leave traces. The man pointed to several locations on the map. But based on survivor accounts, we're looking at multiple coordinated groups, dozens at minimum. Sarin's stomach dropped. I thought we killed their leader. You killed a leader, another advisor said, a woman with silver hair. Not the leader. The Shadow King we've been tracking for months is still out there, and he's angry. Kael's expression was granite. So, what are you recommending? Fortify the capital, pull our forces back, wait for them to make a move. That's defensive thinking, the scarred man argued. We should take the fight to them, find their stronghold and burn it to the ground. We don't know where their stronghold is. Then we find it. The argument continued, voices rising. Sarin watched Kael. He stood perfectly still, listening, his face unreadable. Finally, he raised a hand. Silence fell immediately. We do both, he said. Fortify the capital and increase patrols, but also send scouts into the Blightwood. Find their base. And when we do, his eyes were cold. We end this. The advisors bowed and began discussing logistics. Kael turned to Sarin. Walk with me. They left the strategy room and moved through the fortress in silence. Eventually, they emerged onto a balcony overlooking a vast courtyard. Below, soldiers trained, sparring, running drills, firing arrows at distant targets. You didn't have to include me in there, Sarin said. Yes, I did. Why? Because you're part of this now, whether you want to be or not. He leaned against the railing. And because my advisors need to understand that you're under my protection. If they see me treating you as an outsider, they'll do the same. I am an outsider. You saved my son. That makes you family. The word hit her like a punch. Family. She'd never had that. Not really. The Grey March Pack had been a hierarchy, not a family. And after they'd cast her out, I don't know how to be part of a family, she said quietly. Kale looked at her. Neither do I. Not anymore. His voice was rough. Ren's mother, she was the heart of us. When she died, I lost more than a wife. I lost the part of me that knew how to be soft. You're doing fine with Ren. Am I? He laughed bitterly. I'm training him to fight, to kill, to survive in a world that wants him dead. That's not being a father, that's being a general. He doesn't see it that way. He adores you. He fears me. He respects you. There's a difference. Kael was silent for a long moment. You're good for him, he said finally. You make him feel normal, safe. I'm a disaster. You're genuine. That's rare in this world. Saren didn't know how to respond to that, so she just stood beside him, watching the soldiers below. After a while, Kael spoke again. The bond is getting stronger. She felt it too. That constant awareness of him, his mood, his location, his presence in the back of her mind. Is that normal? She asked. I don't know. This bond, it's different from the ones I've had before. More intense. How many have you had? 2. My father, before he died, and my wife. Pain flickered across his face. When she died, that bond broke. It felt like losing a limb. I'm sorry. Don't be. She died protecting Ren. There's no greater honor. They fell into silence again. Then Kael said, The shadows are hunting you too now. You know that, right? Because of the bond. Because you killed one of their generals. You're a threat. Great. I can protect you here in the fortress, but if you leave, I'm not leaving. The words came out before she'd fully thought them through. But once she said them, she knew they were true. She wasn't leaving. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Kyle looked at her, something unreadable in his eyes. Good, he said quietly. That night, Saren couldn't sleep. The fortress was too quiet, too still. After weeks of survival in the Wraithlands, the comfort felt wrong. She got up and wandered the halls, letting her feet carry her without direction. Eventually, she found herself in the courtyard. Empty now, lit only by moonlight. She sat on a bench and stared up at the stars. Can't sleep either? She jumped, turned. A figure stepped out of the shadows. Not Kael, someone else, tall, lean, wearing dark clothes that seemed to drink in the light. Saren's hand went to her waist, where a weapon would be if she had one. The figure raised its hands. Easy. I'm not here to hurt you. Who are you? A friend? Or I was once. The figure moved closer, and moonlight caught their face. A woman, maybe 30, beautiful in a sharp, dangerous way. Her eyes were pale gray, almost silver. My name is Vyra, she said, and I need to talk to you about the king. Saren's instinct screamed danger. If you have something to say to him, go say it. He won't listen. Not to me. Not anymore. Vera sat on the bench, uninvited. But you're different. You're new. He might actually hear you. Hear me say what? Vera's expression was serious. That he's walking into a trap. Saren's blood went cold. What are you talking about? The Shadow King, the one your advisors were discussing. He doesn't want the capital. He doesn't want territory. Vera leaned forward. He wants Kael, and he's going to use you to get him. That's insane. Is it? Think about it. You're bonded to the king. That means you're a direct link to him. A vulnerability. Kael knows that. He's protecting me. Protection won't matter. Vera's voice was urgent. The Shadow King doesn't fight like normal enemies. He corrupts, twists. He'll get inside your head, inside the bond, and he'll use it to destroy you both. Why are you telling me this? Because I loved him once, before she stopped, looked away. Before everything went wrong, and I don't want to see him die because of someone like you. The word stung. Someone like me, an outsider who doesn't understand the world she's stumbled into. Feyre stood. You're a weakness, Saren, and the Shadow King knows it. If you care about Kael, about Ren, you'll leave before it's too late. I'm not leaving. Then you'll kill them both. Feyre turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows. Saren sat frozen, her mind racing. Was she right? Was Saren a weakness? The bond pulsed. She pressed her hand to her chest, feeling the connection thrumming beneath her skin. No, she thought fiercely. I'm not leaving. I'm not. But doubt had taken root, and it was growing. The next morning, Kael summoned her to the strategy room. She arrived to find it packed with soldiers and advisors, all looking grim. What's going on? She asked. Kael didn't waste time. The scouts found something, a structure in the heart of the Blightwood, heavily guarded. Their stronghold? Most likely. He pointed to a spot on the map. It's here. 3 days' march. Maybe less if we push hard. The scarred advisor spoke. We're organizing a strike force. Hit them before they can organize another attack. When do we leave? One of the soldiers asked. Dawn tomorrow. Kael's eyes swept the room. I'll be leading personally. Murmurs of approval. Saren's stomach twisted. Is that smart? If this is a trap... It's always a trap, Kael said. But we don't have a choice. If we wait, they'll come for us. Better to strike first. How many are you taking? 50, our best fighters. And Ren? Stays here, under heavy guard. Saren nodded. That was something, at least. The meeting continued, discussing routes and tactics. Saren tried to focus, but her mind kept drifting to Veyra's words. He's walking into a trap. After the meeting ended, she caught Kael's arm. Can I talk to you? Alone? He nodded and dismissed the others. When they were alone, Saren said, Last night, someone came to me. A woman named Veyra. Kael's expression went cold. What did she want? To warn me. She said the Shadow King is targeting me specifically, that he'll use the bond to get to you. Veyra is a traitor and a liar. She seemed pretty convinced. She would be. She's been feeding information to our enemies for months. Saren's eyes widened. What? She was my wife's cousin, part of the family. When my wife died, Veyra blamed me, said I'd let her die to save myself. His voice was tight. She's been working against me ever since. But what if she's right? What if I am a weakness? Kael grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. You're not. Do you understand? You're not. How can you be sure? Because I've seen you fight. I've felt your strength. You're many things, Saren. Reckless, stubborn, frustrating, but you're not weak. The conviction in his voice made her throat tight. I'm scared, she admitted. I don't know what I'm doing, and everyone keeps telling me I'm going to get you killed. Then they're idiots. He released her. You saved us. Remember that. Not the other way around. She wanted to believe him, but the doubt lingered. Kael studied her face. You're not going to let this go, are you? Would you? He sighed. No. A pause. Come with us. What? To the Blightwood. Come with the strike force. That's insane. You want to prove you're not a weakness? Then prove it. Fight beside us. I don't know how to fight. You channeled enough power to kill a shadow general. I think you'll manage. His eyes were serious. And more importantly, if Veyra is right, if they are targeting you through the bond, better to have you where I can see you. Saren's mind raced. Every rational part of her said this was a terrible idea. But the thought of staying behind while Kael walked into danger. All right, she said. I'll come. Good. We leave at dawn. Get some rest. He started to leave. Kael, he stopped. Thank you for trusting me. His expression softened, just slightly. Don't make me regret it. The next morning came too fast. Saren stood in the courtyard as the strike force assembled. 50 soldiers, all armed and armored, moving with the efficiency of people who'd done this 100 times. She felt painfully out of place. Thera appeared beside her, holding a bundle. Here, the physician said, thrusting it at her. You'll need this. Saren unfolded it. Leather armor, light, flexible, fitted for her size. Where did this come from? The king ordered it made. Thera's expression was unreadable. Try not to die in it. I'll do my best. She strapped on the armor. It fit perfectly. Ren came running up, his face tight with worry. You're really going? Yeah. But what if... I'll be fine. She knelt down, meeting his eyes. And your father will keep me safe. You're supposed to keep him safe. She smiled. Then we'll keep each other safe. Deal? He hugged her fiercely. Come back. I will. Kale mounted his horse, a massive black stallion that looked like it could kill a man just by stepping on him. Move out, he called. The strike force began to march. Saren fell into step beside them, her heart pounding. They were halfway out of the courtyard when she felt it, a pulse, sharp and wrong. She gasped and stumbled. The mark on her palm was burning, not hot, cold, like ice pressed against her skin. Kale was off his horse in an instant. Saren, what's wrong? The mark, something's... The world tilted. Images flooded her mind. Not hers, not Kyle's, someone else's. A figure wrapped in shadows, tall, crowned, its eyes glowing red. And it was smiling. Found you, a voice whispered. The bond shattered. Saren screamed. Pain exploded through her, worse than anything she'd ever felt. Like her soul was being torn in half. She heard Kyle shouting, felt hands on her arms, but all she could see was darkness. The Shadow King was inside the bond, inside her, and he was laughing. The darkness had teeth. Saren felt them sinking into her mind, tearing through memories, shredding everything that made her her. She tried to scream but couldn't find her voice, couldn't find her body. She was falling through an endless void while something laughed and laughed and laughed. So weak, the Shadow King's voice echoed. So easy to break. She couldn't argue, couldn't fight. The cold was everywhere, freezing her from the inside out. Then, warmth, faint, distant, but real. The bond. Not shattered, just buried. Saren clawed toward it desperately, like a drowning person reaching for the surface. The Shadow King's laughter turned angry. No, you belong to me now. Like hell I do. She didn't know where the thought came from, didn't know where she found the strength, but she grabbed onto that warmth and pulled. Light exploded through the darkness. She gasped, and her eyes flew open. She was on the ground in the courtyard, Kyle's arms around her, his face inches from hers. His eyes blazed gold. Stay with me, he growled. Don't you dare leave. Kyle, I've got you. Just hold on. But she could feel it. The Shadow King was still there, coiled around the bond like a snake. Waiting. Watching. Thera pushed through the crowd of soldiers. Get her inside, now! Kyle lifted Sareen like she weighed nothing and carried her back into the fortress. She tried to speak, to explain what had happened, but the words wouldn't come. The cold was spreading again, slower this time, but relentless. They reached the medical wing. Kyle set her on the cot, his hands shaking. What's happening to her? He demanded. Thera examined the mark on Saren's palm. Her face went pale. The bond's been corrupted. Something's gotten inside it. Can you fix it? I don't know. I've never seen anything like this. She looked up at Kyle. If we can't purge whatever this is, it'll spread. To you. Kale's jaw tightened. Then we sever it. No, Saren forced the word out. You can't. If it's killing you, it'll kill you too. That's what... She gasped as another wave of cold hit her. That's what he wants. He's using me as bait. Thera moved quickly, pulling bottles from her shelves. I can slow the spread, buy us time, but we need to find the source and destroy it. The Shadow King, Kyle said. He's in the Blightwood, at the stronghold. Saren grabbed his arm, her fingers weak. That's why he attacked now, before you could reach him. He wants you to come to him on his terms. Kale looked at Thera. How long does she have? Hours. Maybe a day if the medicine works. His expression went cold. Then we leave now. Kale, this is exactly what he wants. I don't care. He stood, his voice like iron. He made this personal, so we end it, today. He strode out of the room, already shouting orders. Saren tried to sit up, but Thera pushed her back down. You're not going anywhere, the physician said. You have to stay alive. Let the king do what he does best. Which is what? Thera's smile was grim. Burn everything that threatens his family. The medicine Thera gave her tasted like copper and ashes. Saren choked it down and immediately felt the cold recede, just slightly, just enough to think clearly. Through the window, she could see the courtyard. The strike force was mounting up again, moving with urgent purpose. Kael stood at the center, giving orders, his face set in hard lines. Ren appeared in the doorway. Is she dying? His voice was small. Thera looked at him, looked at Saren. Not if I can help it. Ren came to the bedside and took Saren's hand, the one without the mark. You said you'd come back, he whispered. I will. You can't even stand. Technicality. He didn't smile. Papa's going to kill them all. I can see it in his eyes. He's not going to stop until they're gone. Good. But what if something happens to him? What if... He's the scariest person I've ever met, Ren. He'll be fine. You're scared too. I can feel it. Saren squeezed his hand. Yeah, I am, but being scared doesn't mean giving up. Ren was quiet for a moment, then, the bond. Can you feel him right now? She closed her eyes and reached for it. The connection was there, tangled with shadow and ice. But beneath the corruption, she could feel Kael, burning with cold fury. Yeah, she said. I can feel him. Good. Don't let go. No matter what happens. I won't. Thera cleared her throat. The prince needs to go. You need rest. Ren hesitated, then leaned down and kissed Saren's forehead. Fight, he said. Please. Then he was gone. Saren lay back, staring at the ceiling. Her body felt heavy, sluggish. The cold was creeping back despite the medicine. She could feel the Shadow King in there, testing her defenses, looking for weaknesses. You can't win, his voice whispered. You're nothing, an outcast, worthless. She'd heard those words before. From the Grey March pack. From Corvus. From everyone who'd ever looked at her and seen weakness. But she wasn't in the ice fields anymore. Wasn't alone. I'm bonded to a king, she thought fiercely. And I killed your general. So yeah. I'm something. The Shadow King's laughter turned uncertain. Saren smiled. Then she closed her eyes and dove into the bond. She expected darkness, expected the void. Instead, she found herself standing in a hall made of twisted black stone. Shadows writhed along the walls, forming shapes, faces, hands, screaming mouths. And at the far end, sitting on a throne of bones, was the Shadow King. He was massive, easily 10 feet tall, his body wrapped in darkness so thick it seemed solid. His crown was made of jagged obsidian, and his eyes glowed red like dying embers. Brave, he said, his voice echoing. Or stupid. I haven't decided which. Saren walked toward him, her footsteps loud in the silence. Little of both, probably. You're dying, you know that, right? Yeah, I noticed. And yet you come here to face me alone. He leaned forward. Why? Because you're in my head, and I don't like uninvited guests. The Shadow King laughed. It sounded like bones breaking. You can't fight me here. This is my domain, my power. Maybe, but it's my bond, my connection. She stopped a few feet from the throne. And I'm done being scared of you. Brave words from someone who's already lost. Saren looked around the hall, at the shadows writhing on the walls. They weren't random. They were organized, controlled. This wasn't just a mental space. It was a construct, something the Shadow King had built inside the bond to trap her, which meant it had rules, boundaries, weaknesses. She focused on the mark on her palm, felt its warmth beneath the corruption. You made a mistake, she said. Did I? You attacked the bond. Not me, not Kael. The bond itself. She met his burning gaze. Which means you're not actually in my head. You're stuck in between us, in the connection. The Shadow King's expression flickered, just for a moment. She'd guessed right. And if I can reach Kyle, she continued, if I can pull his power through the bond like before, you'll burn yourself out, kill you both. Maybe. Or maybe I'll burn you instead. She reached for the bond. For Kale. The Shadow King lunged. His hand closed around her throat, lifting her off the ground. The cold was immediate, crushing. You think you're clever, he snarled, but you're just a frightened girl playing with forces you don't understand. Saren choked, clawing at his hand, but there was nothing to grab, just shadow and ice. Her vision started to darken. No, not like this. She stopped fighting his grip. Instead, she reached deeper into the bond, past the corruption, past the ice, to the core of the connection, to KL. I need you, she thought. Please. For a moment, nothing. Then, fire. Golden light exploded through the bond, pouring into her. Not the controlled power from before. This was raw, primal. Kale's rage made manifest. The Shadow King screamed and released her. Saren hit the ground gasping. The light burned through her veins, searing away the cold. She stood. The mark on her palm was blazing now, so bright it hurt to look at. You want me? She said, her voice stronger now. Then take me. She opened herself to the bond completely. Let Kael's power flood through her. It was too much, way too much. She could feel herself starting to fracture, her body unable to contain the energy. But she didn't stop. The light grew brighter, hotter. The Shadow King backed away, his form flickering. What are you doing? Fighting. She raised her hand and pushed every ounce of power directly at him. The hall exploded. Saren jerked awake screaming. She was back in the medical wing, her body drenched in sweat. Thera was beside her, looking shocked. What? The mark, Thera breathed. Look at your mark. Saren held up her hand. The corruption was gone. The black tendrils that had been spreading from the mark had vanished, and the mark itself glowed pure gold. How, You purged it. Thera grabbed her wrist, checking her pulse. I don't know how, but you purged it. Saren felt the bond, clean now, clear. And on the other end, Kael. He was moving fast, fighting. She could feel his determination, his fury, and underneath it all, relief, because he'd felt what she'd done, felt her survive. I need to get to him, Saren said, swinging her legs off the cot. You need to rest. Thera, he's walking into a trap and I'm the only one who can warn him. She stood, her legs shook but held. I'm going. The physician stared at her, then, surprisingly, nodded. The armory is 2 halls down. Take what you need. Saren ran. The armory was chaos, soldiers grabbing weapons, shouting orders. Saren pushed through them and grabbed the first blade she could find. It was too heavy, too long, but it would have to do. A familiar voice called out. Saren? She turned. Vera stood in the doorway, her silver eyes wide. You should be dead, Vera said. Yeah, well, I'm stubborn. The Shadow King is about to have a very bad day. Saren pushed past her. Vera grabbed her arm. Wait, if you're going after KL, I'm coming with you. Why would I trust you? Because I'm the only one here who knows the Blightwood well enough to get you there before nightfall. Vera's expression was serious. And because I meant what I said. I don't want him to die. Saren studied her, saw genuine fear in those pale eyes. Fine. But if you betray us, I won't. Vera released her arm. Come on, we need horses. They rode hard, pushing the horses to their limits. The Blightwood rose ahead of them, a vast expanse of twisted black trees that seemed to drink in the light. How far? Saren shouted over the pounding hooves. 2 hours if we don't stop. They didn't stop. The forest swallowed them. The trees pressed in from all sides, their branches forming a canopy so thick that almost no light penetrated. Strange sounds echoed through the darkness. Whispers, scraping, things that might have been words. Saren gripped her borrowed blade tighter. After what felt like forever, they burst into a clearing and stopped. The stronghold was massive, a fortress of black stone that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of obsidian. Shadows clung to it like living things. And surrounding it, Kael's strike force. But they weren't attacking. They were trapped. Shadow creatures swarmed around them, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. The soldiers fought desperately, but for every shadow they destroyed, two more appeared. And in the center of it all, Kael. He fought like something inhuman. His blade cut through shadows with brutal efficiency, his movements too fast to track. But even he was being overwhelmed. Saren's heart clenched. "We have to help them," she said. "We're two people against an army." "Then we even the odds." Saren closed her eyes and reached for the bond. Kael felt her immediately. She sensed his shock, his anger that she was here. "I'm not leaving you," she thought. "You should have stayed." "Shut up and fight." She felt his reluctant acceptance. Then she pulled. Not his power this time. Something else. Something deeper. She pulled on the bond itself, on the connection between them, and she used it as a conduit. The mark on her palm erupted with light, so bright it turned the clearing today. Every shadow creature in range screamed and recoiled. The soldiers looked up, confused. Then someone shouted, "The mark bearer!" Saren raised her hand higher, feeding more energy into the light. The shadows couldn't approach, couldn't touch the golden radiance. Kael didn't waste the opportunity. He rallied his soldiers, forming a defensive line, cutting down the shadows that were too slow to retreat. Saren could feel her strength draining. This wasn't sustainable. She was burning through energy she didn't have. But she held on. Vera moved beside her. "You can't keep this up. Watch me." "You'll kill yourself. Then I'll die." Saren's voice cracked. "But I'm not letting them fall." Vera stared at her, then quietly, "You really care about him. He's family." Something shifted in Vera's expression. She drew her own blade. "Then let's end this." She charged into the clearing, cutting down shadows with precision strikes. Saren watched her go, then focused back on the light. Her vision was starting to blur. Her hands were shaking, just a little longer. Through the bond, she felt Kael fighting his way toward the fortress entrance, felt his determination to reach the Shadow King. The doors burst open, and the Shadow King emerged. He was even more terrifying in person than in the vision, massive, crowned in darkness. His red eyes found Saren immediately. "You," he snarled. "Me," she agreed. He raised his hand. The ground beneath Saren's feet turned to ice. She fell, the light flickering. The shadows surged forward. Kael roared and threw himself between her and the creatures. His blade moved in a blur, but there were too many. One got through. Its claws raked across his shoulder. Saren felt his pain through the bond, felt his fury, and she felt something else. The Shadow King was channeling his power through the corrupted land, through the Blightwood itself, which meant the forest was the source. If she could sever his connection to it, she slammed her marked palm against the frozen ground and pushed. Golden light erupted from the point of contact, spreading outward in waves. It burned through the ice, the corruption, the shadow. The trees screamed. The Shadow King staggered. "What are you... cutting you off?" Saren gasped. The light spread faster, consuming the clearing. Everywhere it touched, the shadows dissolved. The Shadow King's form flickered, weakened. Kael saw his chance. He charged, his blade raised. The Shadow King turned, raising his own weapon, a sword made of frozen darkness. They clashed. The impact shook the ground. Saren couldn't look away, couldn't breathe. Kael fought like he was possessed. Every strike was perfect, brutal, devastating. But the Shadow King was strong, ancient. They were matched. No, Saren thought. No, we didn't come this far to lose. She reached for the bond one more time. But this time, she didn't pull power. She gave it. Every ounce of strength she had left, she poured into Kael, into the connection, into him. The mark on her palm flared one final time, and Kael moved, faster than before. Stronger. His blade blazed with golden light as he drove it through the Shadow King's chest. The creature screamed, a sound that shook the heavens, then exploded into ash. Silence fell. Saren collapsed, her vision going dark. But through the bond, she felt it. Victory. When she woke again, she was being carried. Strong arms, familiar warmth. "Kael? I've got you." His voice was rough, tired, but alive. She managed to open her eyes. They were out of the Blightwood, the sky visible above them. The strike force surrounded them, battered but whole. We won? We won. She felt tears sting her eyes. Good. He looked down at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, he smiled. Really smiled. You saved us, he said. Again. Team effort, he laughed. Actually laughed. Saren let herself relax into his arms. Let the exhaustion take her. They'd won. For now, that was enough. The fortress looked different when they returned. Or maybe Saren was the one who'd changed. She sat in the back of a supply wagon, wrapped in blankets that didn't quite keep out the cold. Her body ached in places she didn't know could ache. The mark on her palm had stopped glowing, settled into a faint silver pattern that pulsed in time with her heartbeat. Beside her, Vera sat in silence, her silver eyes fixed on the road ahead. You didn't have to come back, Saren said quietly. Yes, I did. They're going to arrest you. You know that. Vera's smile was sad. I know, but some things are worth facing. Saren didn't push. She understood that kind of courage, the kind that came from knowing you'd done wrong and choosing to answer for it anyway. The wagon rolled through the fortress gates just as the sun set. Soldiers lined the courtyard, and as Kael's horse appeared at the front of the column, they erupted in cheers. Saren watched from her spot in the wagon as Kael dismounted, his face tired but resolute. He spoke briefly with his commanders, then his eyes found hers across the crowd. He crossed the courtyard in long strides. Can you walk? He asked. Probably not gracefully. Good enough. He helped her down from the wagon. Her legs were shaky, but she managed to stay upright. The crowd had gone quiet, watching. Kael turned to face them, one hand still steadying Saren. This woman, he said, his voice carrying across the courtyard, saved my son, saved me, saved all of us. He paused. She is mark-bearer to the throne, and from this day forward she is under my protection. Anyone who harms her answers to me. The declaration rang out like a bell. Saren felt dozens of eyes on her, some curious, some resentful, some afraid, but none of them looked away. A soldier near the front, one of the veterans who'd fought in the Blightwood, stepped forward and knelt. Mark-bearer, he said simply. Another soldier knelt, then another. Within moments, the entire courtyard was on their knees. Saren's breath caught. She looked at Kael, confused. You earned this, he said quietly. Accept it. She didn't know what to say, didn't know how to process this, the respect, the recognition, the sudden shift from outcast to someone who mattered. So she just nodded, tried to stand a little straighter despite the pain. Kael released her and moved to address the crowd about the battle, about the victory, about rebuilding. Saren stopped listening. Her eyes found Ren, standing near the fortress entrance with Thera. The boy's face was tear-streaked and shining. When the speech ended and the crowd began to disperse, Ren ran to her. She caught him, barely, and held on tight. You came back, he whispered. Told you I would. I was so scared. Me too, kid. Me too. They stayed like that for a long moment, two people who'd found each other in the cold and refused to let go. Eventually, Thera approached. Inside, both of you, now. The medical wing felt almost welcoming this time. Thera checked Saren over with her usual brisk efficiency, muttering about recklessness and impossible recoveries. The mark is stable, she said finally, which shouldn't be possible after what you put it through, but apparently you don't follow normal rules. Story of my life, Thera almost smiled. Almost. Rest, she ordered. Real rest this time. No more running off to fight Shadow Kings. Can't promise that. Try anyway. The physician left, shaking her head. Saren lay back on the cot and closed her eyes. The bond hummed quietly in the back of her mind, Kael's presence steady and warm. She could feel him dealing with the aftermath of the battle, giving orders, making decisions. She let herself drift, following that connection. Hours later, maybe days, time had lost meaning. She woke to find Kael sitting in the chair beside her bed. He looked different, cleaner, rested, though the shadows under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept much. How long was I out? She asked. 2 days. Damn. You needed it. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. We need to talk. Her stomach tightened. That sounds ominous. The bond. What we did in the Blightwood, channeling power back and forth like that. It's changed things. Changed how? It's stronger now, deeper. His golden eyes held hers. I can feel you almost constantly. Your emotions, your location, sometimes even your thoughts. Saren's breath caught. Can you hear what I'm thinking right now? No, it's not that clear, more like impressions, flashes. He paused. Can you feel me? She closed her eyes and reached for the bond. There. His presence, solid, unmistakable, and beneath it concern, uncertainty, something that might have been fear. Yeah, she said. I can feel you. This is permanent, Saren. There's no breaking it now, not without killing us both. I know. And that doesn't scare you? She opened her eyes. Terrifies me, but I'm not running from it. He studied her face for a long moment. Then, why? Why what? Why did you come after me? In the Blightwood. You'd just purged the corruption. You could have stayed safe in the fortress. You really have to ask? Yes. Saren sat up slowly, meeting his gaze. Because you're family. Because Ren needs you. Because... She stopped, started again. Because the idea of you dying out there while I hid here was worse than any danger I could face. Kael's expression softened. You know what you are to me now, don't you? A liability? A partner. He said it simply, firmly. Not just through the bond, but in truth. You've proven yourself a dozen times over. I'm still nobody, no title, no training, no... You're the woman who saved my son, who fought Shadow Kings and survived, who gave everything to protect people she barely knew. He leaned back. That makes you someone, whether you believe it or not. Tears stung her eyes. She blinked them back. What happens now? Now we rebuild. The shadow threat isn't completely gone. There will be remnants, stragglers, but their leader is dead. Their stronghold destroyed. It'll take them years to reorganize. And me? You stay, here, as mark-bearer to the throne. What does that actually mean? It means you're part of the royal family. You'll have quarters in the fortress, resources, protection. You'll train, learn to control the bond, learn to fight, learn politics if you can stomach it. He smiled slightly. And you'll help me raise Ren, because he's decided you're the only person who understands him. Kael, I don't know how to do any of that. Neither did I when I became king. We'll figure it out together. She wanted to argue, to find reasons why this wouldn't work. But the truth was, she didn't want to leave, didn't want to go back to being alone. All right, she said finally. I'll stay. Good. He stood. There's one more thing. What? In 3 days, we're holding a ceremony, honoring the fallen from the Blightwood battle, and formally recognizing those who fought with distinction. Kael, you'll be presented to the court, officially, as mark-bearer and protector of the heir. That sounds horrifying. It will be, but it's necessary. The nobility needs to see you, needs to understand that you're under my protection. She groaned. Do I have to wear something fancy? Afraid so. I hate you. He laughed, actually laughed. You'll survive. The next 3 days passed in a blur. Thera cleared her for light activity, which apparently meant being fitted for formal clothes by a team of terrifying seamstresses who tisked over her scars and calluses. Saren endured it because Ren sat with her through the whole ordeal, making jokes and stealing pins to build tiny sculptures. Vera was confined to quarters pending trial, but Kael allowed Saren to visit her. How are they treating you? Saren asked. Better than I deserve. Vera sat on her narrow bed, her silver eyes tired. The king has been surprisingly merciful. He's not as cold as he pretends. No, he's not. Vera looked at her hands. I was wrong about you. I thought you'd destroy him, destroy everything, but instead you saved it. I just did what felt right. That's what makes you dangerous, in a good way. Vera smiled faintly. The court is going to hate you. Great, something to look forward to. But Kael will protect you, and Ren adores you. That's enough. Saren hoped she was right. The ceremony was held in the Great Hall, a massive chamber with vaulted ceilings and banners hanging from the rafters. Nobles packed the space, dressed in their finest, whispering behind gloved hands. Saren stood in an antechamber, trying not to panic. The dress they'd put her in was beautiful, deep blue silk that somehow made her look regal instead of ridiculous. Her hair had been tamed into something resembling style. She barely recognized herself in the mirror. "You look like a queen," Ren said from the doorway. She turned. He was dressed formally too, dark clothes with the royal crest embroidered in gold. "I look like I'm playing dress-up." "No, you look like you belong here." He took her hand. "Are you nervous?" Completely terrified. "Me too. But Papa says fear is just another thing to manage." "Your papa says a lot of things." Ren grinned. A knock on the door. One of Kael's guards stepped in. "They're ready for you." Saren took a deep breath, squeezed Ren's hand. "Together?" he asked. "Together." They walked into the great hall side by side. The crowd fell silent as they entered. Hundreds of eyes tracked their progress across the floor. Saren kept her chin up, her shoulders back, refusing to show weakness. Kael stood at the far end on a raised platform. He wore his crown, a simple circlet of dark metal, and formal robes that made him look even more imposing than usual. Their eyes met across the hall. The bond pulsed. Warm, steady. "You've got this," his presence seemed to say. Saren and Ren climbed the steps to the platform. Kyle gestured for them to stand beside him. Then he addressed the crowd. "We gather to honor those who fell defending our realm," he began, "and to recognize those whose courage turned the tide of battle." He spoke for several minutes, listing names and deeds. The hall listened in respectful silence. Then his gaze found Saren. "There is one among us whose actions exceeded all expectation, who faced impossible odds and prevailed, who saved not just my son, but our entire kingdom from shadow." He turned to face her fully. "Saren of No House, step forward." Her heart hammered, but she moved forward. Kael's voice rang out. "You are marked by the royal bond. You have fought beside us, bled beside us, proven yourself worthy of trust and honor." He drew a blade, ornate, beautiful, and held it flat across his palms. "I name you Protector of the Air, Shield of the North, and I offer you a place in this court, in this family, for as long as you choose to remain." The hall erupted in whispers. Saren stared at the blade, at Kael, at the hundreds of watching faces. This was it. The moment everything changed. She could refuse, could walk away, return to being nobody, or she could accept, could step into this new life and all its complications. She thought of the Wraithlands, the cold, the loneliness, the certainty that she'd die alone and forgotten. Then she looked at Ren, standing beside his father, his eyes shining with hope. She took the blade. "I accept," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. The hall exploded in applause. Not universal, she could hear the skeptics and the angry, but enough, more than enough. Kael's expression didn't change, but she felt his approval through the bond. Ren launched himself at her, hugging her around the waist. "You're staying," he whispered. "You're really staying." "Yeah, kid, I'm staying." The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur. More speeches, more presentations. Nobles approached her afterward, some genuinely welcoming, others clearly testing her worthiness. Saren handled them all with as much grace as she could muster, which wasn't much, but it seemed to be enough. Finally, hours later, she escaped to the balcony overlooking the courtyard. The night air was cold but clean. She breathed deeply, letting the tension drain from her shoulders. Footsteps behind her. She turned. Kael stood in the doorway, his crown removed, his formal robes replaced with simpler clothes. "Surviving?" he asked. "Barely. Do I have to do that often?" "Afraid so. You're part of the court now. Ceremonies are mandatory." She groaned. "I'm going to hate this, aren't I?" "Parts of it, yes, but parts—" He moved to stand beside her, looking out over the courtyard. "Parts might surprise you." They stood in comfortable silence for a while. Then Saren spoke. "I never thanked you." "For what?" "For not leaving me in the ice. When you found Ren, you could have just taken him and left. But you came back for me. You're bonded to me. I couldn't leave you." You could have, but you didn't." Kael looked at her. "No, I didn't." "Why?" He considered the question. "Because Ren trusted you. And because when I saw you, This woman who'd saved my son despite having every reason not to, I knew you were someone worth protecting. I'm not that special. You're more special than you know." His voice was quiet. "You chose compassion when survival demanded cruelty. You fought when you had every reason to run. And you gave everything to protect people who'd given you nothing." He paused. "That's rare. Precious, even." Saren's throat tightened. "I was just doing what felt right." "I know. That's what makes it matter." They fell silent again. After a while, Kyle said, "I'm glad you stayed." "Me too." He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his face. And for a moment he didn't look like a terrifying king, just a man who'd found something he'd thought he'd lost. Hope. The weeks that followed were exhausting and exhilarating in equal measure. Sarin trained every morning with the Royal Guard, learning sword forms and hand-to-hand combat. She was terrible at first, all awkward limbs and poor balance, but she improved. Slowly. Afternoons were spent with Thera, learning to control the bond, how to pull power without burning out, how to sense Kyle's location and state of mind, how to shield her thoughts when she needed privacy. Evenings belonged to Ren. They'd walk the fortress grounds, talking about everything and nothing. He taught her the names of the noble houses. She taught him how to track animals and build fires. He was healing. Still had nightmares about his mother, about the shadows, but they were coming less frequently, and through it all the bond with Kyle grew stronger. She could feel him now almost constantly, a warm presence in the back of her mind. Sometimes it was comforting, sometimes it was annoying, but it was always there. They fought about it once. "You're being reckless," Kyle snapped after she'd pushed herself too hard in training and collapsed. "I'm fine." "You're not fine. I can feel your exhaustion, your pain. You're burning yourself out." "That's my choice." "Not when it affects me, too." They'd stared at each other, both furious. Then Saren had laughed. "This is insane. We're arguing about being too connected." Kyle's anger had faded. "It is insane. Maybe that's just us." He'd smiled. "Maybe." 2 months after the ceremony, news arrived that changed everything. Serene was in the training yard sparring with one of the guards when Kale appeared at the edge of the ring. "Stop!" he called. The guard immediately stepped back and bowed. Kale looked at Saren. "We need to talk, privately." They walked to his study, a room she'd only been in a handful of times. Maps and reports covered every surface. "What's wrong?" she asked. "The council wants to formalize your position." "I thought it was formalized. Protector of the air, remember?" "That's a title. They want more. They want you recognized as—" He stopped, started again. "They're pushing for you to be named consort." Saren's brain short-circuited. "What?" "Not wife. The bond makes that complicated, but consort, partner to the throne." "Kyle, we're not— I know." He held up a hand. "And I told them as much. But they're not wrong about the optics. You're bonded to me. You're raising my son. You stand beside me in court. To the outside world, you already look like consort. They just want to make it official. What do you want?" He looked at her for a long moment. "I want you to be comfortable, to feel safe. If that means keeping things as they are, we keep things as they are. If it means taking a title that gives you more protection and authority," he shrugged, "then we do that." "You're really leaving this up to me?" "Your life. Your choice." Saren sat down, her mind racing. "If I accept, what changes?" "You'd have a seat on the council, more resources, more guards, and—" He hesitated. "You'd be seen as my equal, not just someone under my protection, but someone who shares power." "That sounds terrifying." "It is. And if I say no, then nothing changes. You're still mark-bearer, still protected, still family." She looked at him. At this man who'd gone from stranger to ally to something she didn't have words for. "Can I think about it?" "Take all the time you need." She took 3 days. Talked to Ren, who was enthusiastically in favor. Talked to Thera, who pointed out the political advantages. Talked to Vera, who'd been sentenced to service in the fortress instead of execution, who said simply, "You've already been doing the job. Might as well have the title." On the third night, Saren found Kael on the same balcony where they'd talked after the ceremony. "I'll do it," she said without preamble. He turned. "You're sure?" "No, but I've never been sure about anything, and it hasn't stopped me yet." He smiled. "That's fair?" "When?" "There's a gathering of the Northern Lords next month. We'll announce it then." "Another ceremony?" "Afraid so," she groaned. "I really hate ceremonies." "I know." He moved closer. "But you're good at them. Better than you think." Liar. True observation. They stood together in the cold, watching the stars. "Saren," Kael said quietly. "Thank you." "For what?" "For staying. For choosing this. For choosing us." She looked at him, at the man who'd become her family. "Where else would I go?" she said simply. The gathering of Northern Lords was every bit as terrible as Saren had feared. Nobles from across the realm packed the great hall, all dressed in their finest, all watching with calculating eyes. Saren wore another formal dress, dark green this time, with silver embroidery that matched the mark on her palm. Ren stood beside her, wearing his princely best and looking far too serious for an 8-year-old. "Nervous?" she whispered. "A little. You?" "Completely." He grinned and took her hand. Kyle entered, and the hall fell silent. He wore his crown and full royal regalia, looking every inch the king. He gave his speech, talked about the victory over the shadows, talked about rebuilding and strengthening alliances. Then he called Sareen forward. She walked to the platform, her heart hammering. Kyle's voice rang out. "Lords and ladies of the realm, I present Saren, mark-bearer and protector of the air. She has proven herself in battle and in service. And today, I name her consort to the northern throne, partner in rule and in purpose." The hall erupted, not in applause, in chaos. Lords shouted objections. Ladies whispered furiously. The noise was deafening. Saren stood frozen, overwhelmed. Then Ren stepped forward, his small voice somehow cutting through the noise. "She saved my life." The hall quieted. "She saved all of us," Ren continued, his voice stronger now. "She fought when no one else would. She gave everything to protect us. And if you can't see that..." He looked around the hall with those two old eyes. "Then you're not paying attention." Silence. Then, from the back of the hall, someone started clapping. One person. Then two. Then a dozen. Not universal, not even close. But enough. Kyle looked at his son with obvious pride. Then at Saren. "Well?" he said quietly. "What do you say?" She looked out at the hall, at the faces, some hostile, some curious, some actually respectful. She thought about the Wraithlands, about freezing alone in the ice, about being worthless. And she thought about now, about standing beside a king, about being someone's family. "I say yes," she said clearly. "I accept." The applause grew louder. Not everyone joined in, but more than before. Sareen met Kael's eyes and saw approval there, saw something that might have been gratitude. The bond pulsed warm between them. She'd made her choice, and for the first time in her life, it felt right. That night, after the ceremony ended and the nobles had dispersed to their quarters, Saren found herself on the balcony again. She seemed to gravitate there when she needed to think. Footsteps behind her. She didn't need to turn to know who it was. "Can't sleep?" Kael asked. "Too much noise in my head." He moved to stand beside her. They looked out over the courtyard together, comfortable in the silence. "You did well today," he said finally. "I stood there while Ren did all the work." "You stayed. That's what mattered." She glanced at him. "Do you ever regret it? The bond?" "No." He said it without hesitation. "Do you?" "No." She smiled faintly. "But sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't pulled Ren out of the snow that day." "You'd still be in the Wraithlands, probably dead." "Yeah, probably." She looked at the mark on her palm, silver in the moonlight. "It's strange. One choice. One moment. And everything changed." "That's how life works. We make choices. They lead to other choices. And eventually we end up somewhere we never expected." "You sound like you're speaking from experience." "I am." He was quiet for a moment. "When my wife died, I thought that was it. that I'd never feel anything but rage and grief. But then you came along, this impossible, stubborn woman who refused to give up, and suddenly I remembered what it felt like to have hope. Saren's throat tightened. Kyle, I'm not saying this well. He turned to face her. What I'm trying to say is, thank you for reminding me that there's more to this life than survival, that family isn't just blood, and that sometimes the most important bonds are the ones we choose. She didn't trust herself to speak, so she just nodded. He smiled, that rare, genuine smile, and touched her shoulder briefly before heading back inside. Saren stayed on the balcony, looking out at the fortress that had become her home. She thought about the woman she'd been, alone in the ice, worthless, broken. And she thought about who she was now. Mark-bearer, protector, consort, family. The journey between those two versions of herself had nearly killed her, but she'd survived, and more than that, she'd found something she'd never thought she'd have: belonging. 6 months later, Saren stood in the training yard watching Ren spar with his instructor. The boy had grown, still small but stronger, more confident. He caught her watching and grinned, waving. She waved back. He's doing well, Kael said from beside her. He is. You should be proud. I am, he paused. Of both of you. Saren glanced at him. What did I do? You've taken to this life, despite everything. Despite having no training, no preparation, you've made yourself indispensable. I just show up and try not to break things. You do more than that. He looked at her seriously. The lords are starting to respect you. Not all of them, but more every day. They see how you handle yourself, how you protect Ren, how you stand beside me in council and don't back down when they try to intimidate you. They're still waiting for me to fail. Let them wait. You're not going anywhere. She smiled. No, I'm not. They watched Ren in comfortable silence. Eventually, Kael spoke again. I have something for you. He pulled a small box from his pocket and handed it to her. Saren opened it carefully. Inside was a ring, simple silver, engraved with the same pattern as her mark. It's a symbol, Kael explained, of your position, of the bond. Wear it if you want, or don't, but I wanted you to have it. Saren pulled out the ring and slipped it onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Thank you, she said quietly. You've earned it. Ren finished his sparring session and ran over, sweaty and grinning. Did you see? I disarmed him twice. I saw, Saren said. Very impressive. Can we go to the market, please? I want to get supplies for that project we talked about. Kael raised an eyebrow. What project? We're building a miniature fortress, Ren explained, with working gates and everything. Of course you are. Kael looked at Saran. Do you have time? For him? Always. They walked through the fortress together, king, consort, and heir. And if anyone found it strange that the most powerful man in the north was helping his son shop for wood and wire, they didn't say so, because this was family, messy, complicated, chosen rather than born, but real. That evening, Saren sat in her quarters, rooms that had been hers for months now, but still sometimes surprised her with their comfort. She looked at the ring on her finger, at the mark on her palm, thought about how far she'd come. From worthless outcast to consort of the Northern Throne, it still didn't feel entirely real. A knock on her door. Come in. Ren entered, wearing his sleep clothes, his hair damp from washing. Can't sleep? She asked. Not yet. Wanted to say goodnight. She patted the seat beside her. He climbed up, settling against her side. Are you happy here? He asked quietly. Yeah, I am. Are you? Yes. Especially since you're here, Psych. He was quiet for a moment. Then, I'm glad Papa found you. Me too, kid. Will you always stay? She thought about lying, about giving him the easy answer, but Ren deserved better than that. I can't promise always, she said honestly. Life is too unpredictable, but I can promise that I'll stay as long as you need me, as long as I'm wanted here. We'll always want you here. Then I guess you're stuck with me. He grinned and hugged her tight. After a while, Kael appeared in the doorway. Bedtime, he said to Ren. The boy groaned but stood. Fine, but I'm not tired. Sure you're not. Ren hugged Saren one more time, then headed for the door. Kael ruffled his hair as he passed. When he was gone, Kael looked at Saren. Thank you, he said, for everything. Stop thanking me. Can't. It's habit now. She rolled her eyes. Get out. Some of us need sleep. He smiled and left, closing the door behind him. Zareen lay back on her bed, staring at the ceiling. She thought about the woman she'd been in the Wraithlands, dying in the cold, convinced she'd end alone and forgotten. And she thought about who she was now, not perfect, not without scars, but alive, part of something, loved. She closed her eyes and let herself feel the bond, Kael's presence steady in her mind, Ren asleep in his quarters nearby. Her family, strange and complicated and absolutely worth every hardship it had taken to get here. The outcast had become a queen, not through fate, not through destiny, through choice. Her choice. And that made all the difference. Outside, snow began to fall, soft and gentle, nothing like the brutal blizzards of the Wraithlands. Saren watched it through her window, the flakes catching the moonlight like tiny stars. She thought about the child she'd pulled from the storm, about the mark that had burned into her palm, about every impossible thing that had happened since, and she smiled. Because this, all of this, had started with one simple decision: to save a life instead of walking away, to choose compassion over survival, to refuse to let someone die alone in the cold. That choice had pulled her into a fate far greater than exile, had given her purpose, family, home. The mark on her palm pulsed softly, and through the bond she felt Kael's quiet contentment, felt Ren's peaceful dreams. She was no longer the unwanted outcast. She was recognized, respected, transformed, and for the first time in her life, Saren allowed herself to believe she deserved it. The snow continued to fall as she drifted off to sleep, warm and safe and whole. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new struggles. The nobility would continue to test her. Enemies would emerge. Life at court would never be easy. But she'd faced Shadow Kings and survived. She could handle whatever came next. Because she wasn't facing it alone. Not anymore. Never again. The outcast had stepped out of the cold. And she was never going back.